G'day everyone, how are you doing? Trusting that you're healthy and safe. If not, I do wish the best of health for you or recovery. Over here on the side of the desk, we're doing absolutely fantastic. Well, today we're going high flying. We're going to have a look into this Dell Alienware M15 R7. It's a 15-inch gaming laptop, and you can either get the Intel or the AMD version. Right here, I've got the AMD version. So we're going to specifically look at the AMD performance, the temperatures and fan noise, and have a look at the internals as well. And as always, I will be putting timestamps along this video so you can skip to a different section that you may be interested in. Looking at the configurations for the M15 R7 AMD version, for the processor, you can either get the Ryzen 7 6800H processor or the Ryzen 9 6900HX processor. Now, as for memory wise, it has two SODIMM slots and can go up to maximum capacity of 64 gigs. Now, as for storage wise, you've got two slots of M.2 and they can take on the 2280 format SSD. As for the graphics, it does have a discrete graphics, which you can choose anywhere between the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3050 Ti or the 3060 or the 3070 Ti or even the powerful 3080 Ti. There are three options for the display. Two of them are full HD resolution options. One of them is 165Hz refresh rate and the other has a whopping 360Hz refresh rate. Both of them have brightness or lumens rating of 300 nits, and the third option is a quad HD resolution display with 240 Hz refresh rate and brightness or luminance rating of 400 nits. All three option displays have an aspect ratio of 16:9 and all have a matte anti-glare finish to it. Measuring the color gamma coverage of the full HD display, which has 165Hz refresh rate, it resulted with 95.2% sRGB coverage, 68.2% Adobe RGB coverage, and 70.4% DCI P3 coverage. The full HD 160Hz display only exhibit very slight ghosting from the UFO ghosting test, and when I took it out to direct sunlight, I didn't have too much issues consuming multimedia and also working on documents. There are two speakers located on the bottom side of the laptop on either side of the laptop. They are bottom firing speakers, and when I tested out the maximum volume of the speakers, it managed to measure the maximum of 89 decibels. I should consider this pretty loud. And as for the sound quality of the speakers, there is some bass, but it's not that low-end bass. I would consider these mid to high-end bass. We've got very strong mids and highs. I didn't really hear much distortion when the volume was set to its max. And I would say they are balanced to the mids. Now, as for the acoustic wise, they're not too bad, and truthfully, they are pretty decent sounding speakers for two speaker system. Looking at the ports, starting on the right hand side, we've got two USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, which are Type A ports. The one on the right hand side has power share. Looking at the back, we're starting with a USB Type C port. Now, this USB Type C port is dependent on your discrete graphics that you configured. If you got an RTX 3050 Ti, then this USB-C port is a USB 3.2 Gen 2 port. If you have a RTX 3060 or 3070 or 3080, is a USB 4 port, which can go up to 40 gigabits. And then we have another USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A port, and then we've got a HDMI 2.1 port, and then the power adapter port. And looking on the left hand side, we've got the RJ45 Ethernet port, and then the audio jack. The weight of the Alienware M15 R7 AMD is 2.58 kilos plus the 240 watt power adapter becomes a combined weight of 3.64 kilos that you might be carrying around with you. This is a recording from the 720p webcam from the M15 R7. This is the video and audio unedited so you can hear and see what the quality of the webcam is like. Now, I'd definitely love to see Dell provide a 1080p option for the webcam. If for those users who want to do an upgrade to a high quality webcam, I'd definitely love to see. At the moment, we've only got a 720p webcam. Now, as always, I'm in an environment with two types of lights currently turned on. I've got my one studio light turned on and also the down lights in this room turned on for ambience. I'm going to turn off my one studio light off. You'll see this adjust and we'll see how this goes. Now, the two down lights in front of me is a bit far away, so there's not much currently light hitting on my face. This is what I consider a dark environment. If you're in an office environment, you should have much more light than what I'm currently at. And I'm going to turn my one strobe back on, and you'll see this adjust again. And of course, better quality light gives you better quality picture. Now, I do find that the adjustment is a bit slow and gradual, which is not too bad. And as for the color wise, I find the white balance not too bad at all. I'd definitely love to hear what your thoughts of this webcam. Put a comment below. M15R7 can either come with a 56 or an 86 watt-hour battery. And the one I tested had an 86 watt-hour battery, and I managed to get 6 hours and 2 minutes for the modern office battery life test in PC Mark 10, 1 hour and 23 minutes for gaming, and 7 hours and 18 minutes for video playback in the Procon battery life test. Now, all these tests were run with the display set at 60 Hz, and I did also test the battery life test in the 165 Hz refresh rate, and barely made much of a difference. You're only losing maybe about 1%, so anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes, you're only losing out. But to keep things consistent on this channel, I really measure things at 60 Hz, so you can compare with other laptops on this channel. Overall, I find the battery life just slightly above average compared to other gaming laptops. Let's have a look at the temperatures and fan noise. When I took my measurement, my ambient temperature in the room was 21 degrees Celsius, and the ambient room noise measured in at 36 decibels. Now, before I give you measurements, just give you a reference point. Your average hand at 21 degrees Celsius is anywhere between 33 to 34 degrees Celsius. So hopefully that gives you an idea how hot or how cool this laptop could be. So I took my base measurement when the computer was idle, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 32 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it had a maximum of 38 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 42 degrees Celsius. Then I put 20% load on the computer, so that's pretty much average use. So that's tasks like office productivity work, surfing web, streaming video, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in a maximum of 35 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it had a maximum of 40 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 54 degrees Celsius. Then I put 50% load on the computer, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured a maximum of 35 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it had a maximum of 47 decibels. And the average internal core temperature was 64 degrees Celsius. Then I put 100% load on the computer, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured a maximum of 45 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it stayed at 47 decibels. And the average internal core temperature was 75 degrees Celsius. Then I engage high performance mode while keeping 100% load on the computer, and the hottest area on the computer measured in a maximum of 43 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it spun all the way up to a maximum of 49 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 79 degrees Celsius. I also measured the bottom back cover while having 100% load, and the hottest area on the back cover measured a maximum of 52 degrees Celsius. And the fan noise, of course, stayed at 47 decibels. The M15R7 doesn't really warm up that much, even by putting 50% load, but it does give a little bit of a whine, even at idle. And this is something that I did mention in my unboxing and first impression video. Hopefully, Dell will be able to address this by just giving it a firmware update just to tone down the fan while it's not really having much load. Else, the temperatures on the M15R7 is pretty good throughout its range. Let's have a look at the stability performance of the processor in the M15R7. This particular unit is configured with the AMD Ryzen 7 6800H processor. And look at the AMD website. It reports that this processor has a maximum boost clock of 4.7 GHz and a base clock speed of 3.2 GHz. So we want to see in this test that it's holding at least 3.2 GHz or above. Now it has a default TDP of 45 watts. And I've got this computer connected to the mains power and set to best performance in Windows Power Scheme, and also in performance fan profile in the Zeus suite. I've got pretty much 100% load on the processor, memory, and also storage, and also the discrete graphics is running on a lot of load for over 3.5 hours now. And I can see that the speed of the processor is ranging anywhere between 3.3 to about 3.8 gigahertz. And I'll say this will be an average of about 3.5 gigahertz. Now it does range, it doesn't actually sit on any particular speed of processor. And looking at the actual temperature of the internal core of the processor is ranging anywhere between 75 degrees to 80 degrees Celsius. So we do have a bit of headroom still to actually go higher, which is absolutely fantastic. So this is good for longevity, that it's actually not going as it's crazy. And we are speed-wise for the processor is above 3.2 gigahertz, and I think Windows is just cracking itself out by reporting sometimes at 0, but it is still processing very well, and it is still above the 3.2 base clock speed. Dell have done an absolute fantastic job on the thermal solution, as well as preserving the life of this processor as well. So definitely, we don't have thermal throttling in terms of base clock speed, but we do have a bit of boost clock speed throttling. That's not too bad. That's usually more saved for single burst speed anyways. Here's the results of the benchmarks of the M15R7. This one's configured with a Ryzen 7 6800H processor with 16 gigs RAM, 1TB SSD, and also the RTX 3070 Ti. Here's the results for Passmark, Citybench R23, PC Mark, 3D Mark, Geekbench 5, Crystal Disk Mark, Procon Office, Procon Photo Edit, Procon Video Edit, Fusion Photoshop, Fusion Lightroom, Fusion Premiere Pro, Fusion After Effects, Fusion DaVinci Resolve, Blender, Luxmark, Furmark, Octane Bench, Eugene Engine, and Spec View Prep. Into gaming benchmarks like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Far Cry New Dawn, Far Cry 6, Cyberpunk 2077, and F1 2021. Looking at the keyboard, we have a Cherry mechanical keyboard. Now these Cherry keys are absolutely fantastic. They have great travel distance. We've got very nice, strong tactile feel. It's quite strong bounce back, and they have a very smooth surface and what I consider a medium-sized key, and have very nice spacing in between. But definitely I love the actual feel of these keys, and they also have quite a nice mechanical sound to them as well. They're just really satisfying to actually type on or even work on. The keyboard is also RGB backlit. You can configure the RGB backlight in the Alienware command center. There are also 3 settings for the backlit keys: off, low, and high. The trackpad is a little different to what I was expecting for this type of size computer. It has the normal width that I was expecting, but the height of the trackpad is what I would say about 2/3 of what I was expecting. And I thought this may annoy me, but after a bit of use, I actually did not find any problem at all. In fact, I actually prefer it over those oversized trackpad. And as for the surface of the trackpad, it is glassy, silky smooth, and it didn't have any issues registering my touch. And it is a mechanical trackpad. So it's hinge at the top and you depress it at the bottom. And of course, it is multi-gesture as well. We're going to have a look at the hinge. So I'm going to do the one finger test first on how to open this up. And it is hinge on both sides, and we're just going to do one finger. Now it doesn't take too much resistance on using my one finger to actually lift it up, and it goes all up to what I would say 130 degrees. Now when I actually do also just a nice little wiggle test for just this display, see how well that is built. It isn't too much wobbly effect on the display, so that's good to see. And also just do the quick wiggle test of see how if it clamps very well. Now I can see there is just a very slight little give on the clamping of when in closing, but I wouldn't be actually annoyed by it. It just does pretty well considering how large this computer is, and also the amount of force it is to use. It's actually very smooth all the way through. That's the same pressure I used just to open it up, which is actually not too bad, which means they've done actually a decent job on the hinge for this M15R7. Let's have a look at the internals. First off, need to unscrew the 10 Phillip head screws. Good to see Dell's using Phillip head screws. That's an easy screwdriver to find. After I'm just going to pry it open. Now before you actually push this out and lift the cover, you need to actually make sure you push the cover downwards first, and then lift it up at the exact same time. Now that's just make sure you don't actually break this lever or ledge at the very holding this back cover. Now bring on this to speed up time, and we can see we've got the 86 watt-hour battery. It's quite a large battery, and we've got the battery connected right here. And then above the battery, we've got 2 SOL-DIMM slots for the memory. And then on the left-hand side, we see the first slot of M.2 for the storage. And then on the right-hand side of the battery, we can see the second slot of M.2 for SSD for another extra storage. Above the primary storage on the left-hand side is the wireless Bluetooth module, which is replaceable. And also running a dual fan system, as you can see. Overall, the Alienware M15 R7 AMD version has some very nice temperatures and fan noise. We've got performance to actually match those temperatures. It isn't the fastest gaming laptop out there, as the configuration isn't the highest spec, but I am definitely not shameful by the performance it is able to provide for the configuration. And the display it's a really decent display. It's definitely made for gaming, and it's actually quite decent. And a highlight for me is definitely the keyboard. I love the keyboard. The keys on it's got that nice tactile feel, nice travel distance, and also that sound. Absolute great. The trackpad is actually really good. I say above average because I actually was surprised by the height of it and its usability. I think it actually is great rather than seeing this nice square and over large trackpad. And the speakers, I'm actually very surprised by the sound quality of the speakers. It is only a 2-speaker system. I like to see the next version have maybe a 4-speaker system with some woofers, but for the 2-speaker system, it is actually very decent. It's quite loud as well. And the ports, we've got a nice selection of ports and where they're located as well. So overall, the Dell Alienware M15 R7 is a great gaming laptop. I hope you find this video informative or enjoyed it. If you did, and to support my channel, smash that like button for me. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button bottom center of the screen. I do try to upload a new video every week. And as always, imperfections in life makes it beautiful and interesting. And I'll see you in the next video.